sound recorder? Maybe Jason, do you know what a sound recorder is on the alley?
Get the license to run the software with the software license, including the process.
How are you? Good yourself?
There's no maintenance.
Rick just gave you the last contract. Mile a minute all day long.
They got free takes.
Everything's ironed out, so we can move forward with it. Patrick put it on my desk this morning. Hopefully we can get you actually got the big line. That's my
Y'all take a seat around the table. We got to try to use microphones. So if you're here already, get a spot at the table. We're live streaming this meeting. Lewis is about to start here in a minute.
And those of us that take up more space will stay out of the way.
Lou, you can go ahead and start it whenever you like.
This is what we see after seeing everybody.
You setting up a meeting for radio.
Okay.
We're live with all this stuff.
How are you?
Doing good. Can you give me some pricing on fireworks?
Sure.
Cindy, where are you?
Thank you.
All right, Marty, you can type in this. And then we'll just save it. I'll email it to you.
Yes. So we'll go ahead and get started. I want to thank everybody for being here. We're live streaming the meeting for those that couldn't make it. You'll see there's a microphone on the table in front of you, and since we are live streaming, we'd like to try to use the microphones whenever possible. So let's get started by going around and introducing who everybody is. We've got some decisions we're going to try to make today so that we can give some recommendations to our board. We'll start right over here with you, Dave, if you want to. You can just pass this around.
I'm Dave Palmer. I am the owner of Florida Farmers Market in Paxton and also part of the Paxton Agricultural Program up at Paxton School.
Josh Skyers, I'm the IT manager for the Walton County Sheriff's Office.
David Langford, Network Administrator, Walton County.
Chad Skyers, IT Director, Walton County.
Barry Franklin, ITS. We currently manage the wide area network and internet access for the County Commission.
Ken Machuda with ITS.
Josh Irvin, Walton County TDC, Beach Maintenance Manager.
Hi, I'm Kate Wallace. I'm here with Florida Internet and Television.
Jason Cook, Tech Support, Board of County Commissioners.
Henry Martin, CIO for Walton County School District.
I'm Rick Everett, Administrative Aide for Commissioner Cecilia Jones.
I'm Rick Wilson, Walton County Administration.
I'm Corey Mays from WZEP 1460. I am the news correspondent.
Well, thank you for everybody being here today. And we had a meeting 2 weeks ago where we discussed Wi-Fi and what we're trying to do in this county here. You know, we've been soliciting unofficial proposals from several vendors here over the last 3 to 4 months and saying, look, here's our problem, here's what we're trying to do, which is basically provide some level of connectivity for our residents and our students, whether they be young or old, in Walton County schools or taking college courses online. We need to provide them with something because we know in Walton County a lot of parents are driving to McDonald's or Hardee's or wherever there's free Wi-Fi and sitting outside of those buildings. So we want to try to address that and attack that. There's some avenues for funding that we've identified, which is Triumph funding, possible matches from Restore Fund, and then even possible matches maybe from our TDC for some of the analytical parts of what we're trying to do to get better information on road usage and driving patterns of our tourists and our visitors when they come down here. But what we're going to talk about today is a couple of things. But first, I want you to look at this map I provided everybody, and this is just where our anchor institutions are. And those are our libraries, our fire stations, somewhere where we actually have fiber in the ground, connectivity to a building. And then there's a 6-mile ring around those locations. That's what the rings are. there's a couple of places where they don't overlap. But we wanted to see, here's our anchor institutions. What are some some concentric rings around these that would give us some areas where we could start to try to address Wi-Fi. So, what we need to do today and what we really want to try to get accomplished is this board to make a recommendation to our board members as what we want to move forward with Triumph. And, there's been some discussion over this past couple of months of what that should be. We want to make sure that we're all on the same page and on a consensus. So I'd really just like to have an open discussion about that for a good 30 minutes. And then we've got some news that Rick Everett's going to share with us on some federal money that's coming available and some political help that we are receiving for our state, which we need. And when I say political, I mean senators, state and federal senators that are going to bat for Walton County. So that's always a good thing. But let's open up the discussion. Anyone want to start? I guess to give us a starting point, we've looked at scenarios of blanketing the entire south end of the county with Wi-Fi from border to border, utilizing analytics for our tourists to give them free internet connection while they're here in return to see where they're going and how they're getting there. No personal information, but real-time traffic studies. We know how many people are going to Edwaline Park, for example, instead of going to Inlet Beach Park where there's plenty of parking or something like that. So trying to identify trends of our tourists and how we can become more efficient and provide a better area for them to come and play and enjoy their time while they're here. Then we move to sort of shrinking that down and making a 6-mile radius around our library, which is, I think, a good idea. It just may be a little ambitious for pilot, beta testing, proof of concept. And proof of concept is something that we've talked about here recently in these meetings, and I think it's a very valid point that we need to be conscious of whatever we do is not too big to thwart future attempts to expand our program, but not too small to make an impact. So we need to find a happy medium, I feel like, and start from there with a beta test, a proof of concept, something that we say, look how great this has worked. Here's our cost for it. Let's expand this now another mile beyond that until we hopefully reach what we have here. And I want to be clear, and we have been clear in these meetings, that this isn't a replacement for fiber to the home. It just isn't. I know that we've driven down on the south end, and there's nothing but metal roofs down there. I think Josh can probably tell us that from working with the TDC. And we know the problems of Wi-Fi signals getting underneath metal roofs and the issue for that. But our students who need the help and the connectivity, they can sit outside, they can sit by a window. They can get connectivity, and we can make sure we get it to them. But I feel it's important that we identify 2 areas to try to attack, because we need to attack somewhere for proof of concept that has the infrastructure in place already. A lot of infrastructure, which would be our south end, where we have libraries, schools. But I also like to look at some of our rural areas, like sections 4. On this map, you have 2, 6, 5, or 7, because we also want to have a proof of concept for our rural area. And I don't know that it's been done like we're looking to do. And Barry, I know you guys have done a lot of this in Alabama. I know they usually do it in the city blocks and things of that nature. We're trying to do something completely different. But I feel like if you look at our Flowers View area, which is area number 2, we have a library up there that has 5 computers on it. And at 3:30 every day, every one of those computers is used up by the children in the area because they have no connectivity at their house through Fairpoint or Bright House or CenturyLink, whoever that may be. They have no cell signal out there for their family to get a signal, so they go up there and they do their homework. They do a lot of different things on those computers, but I think we can provide a better avenue, a better area for them to get this from, either closer to their home, outside of the library, a mile away from it, and that's just one of many locations we have. So let's start the discussion there, and who wants to be the first to talk about it and see what we want to move forward with? Dave?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Well, I happen to live right down the street from Flowers View, so I see a lot of that. And I did have a conversation with Ms. Neal, the principal at Paxton, just kind of asking what she thought about the idea of trying to get internet to students that can't get it. And she's all for it. We also have another sort of side benefit of being rural. Agriculturally, the internet is very useful for today's technology. Tractors and seeders and other equipment actually can drive itself if it has the correct equipment on it, which could, make us basically a technology boom in our rural areas if they have that available. But right now, it doesn't go to their homes. It doesn't go out into the farms. So this is a step in the right direction for development as well as education. And we have, 90% on free and reduced lunch up there? I think that's right, Henry? So you know that those people don't have the funds necessarily to have it at their house, even if they have a device, but almost everyone has a device of some sort. You can buy a tablet for about $30. So it is putting it in the homes of people who really need it and making it affordable for them. Even if it's not super high speed, it's better than nothing for sure. And I own a restaurant with free Wi-Fi, so I have a lot of those people camping out in my parking lot as well.
Who's next? Josh, help us out.
I can speak on a couple of different angles, but primarily for my employment purposes, we look at this as the benefit to the first responders and performing their daily duties. It's no secret that every police officer has a laptop in their vehicle that they use for reporting, for navigation, for looking up records on individuals they're dealing with, to kind of reduce some of the load that goes on inside of the 911 center. Additionally, since the sheriff has taken over management of fire rescue personnel, we're looking at expanding that to the ambulance as well. The one problem that we've always had is connectivity inside of those vehicles and the movement around. Granted, we have cellular modems in each of these devices, but in the north end of the county and towards the east side of our county, there's a lack of connectivity. In the south end, we're golden, but it does absolutely nothing for areas like Red Bay, Darlington, the Valley, Gaskin, Flowers View, and that's really where we're looking at it from emergency services, is the ability to tap into some type of Wi-Fi signal in instances where the cellular technology is not there. And neither one can replace the other, but they can supplement the other so that at least they have connectivity at least 75% of the time.
As far as a rural site, just looking at this map, there's kind of three that stick out as far as lack of connectivity from what my understanding of the areas are, and that would be 2, 6, and 5. So, as far as your rural area, I would kind of focus on one of those three. Depending on how many different homes we might be able to hit, I'd like to know how many homes are in those areas and maybe that do not have connectivity currently. As far as a beta test, I'd like to get service to as many people who do not have service as possible. Plus, obviously with Wi-Fi, we're going to be dealing with a lot of pine trees and pine needles and different things like that. So if you want to bring that in and have a good understanding of how the technology may work, you may want to select an area with that type of trees or whatever.
What about reach of Wi-Fi? What do you think that needs to be? Should we start at 1 mile circle and let's try to hit that, or shorter than that?
Well, again, if you're going to tie your backbone into the library or to the EMS stations where the fiber is already laid, if you're going to have your backbones in those areas, obviously your radius would have to start from there. So you would need to decide how many homes you can hit from either one of those locations to decide if you want to go out 2 miles, 3 miles. I would like to try and go out at least 3 miles, but it would just depend on how many homes you could hit, maybe in a 2 mile radius versus a 3 mile radius, but I'm feeling somewhere in that area.
Rick, do we have information on the survey that went out that can give us some of the information that Jed was asking as far as population within each area?
We actually have the population for these ring circles, we want to call them, and what I'll do is I'll get with our GIS department. We'll make 3 mile ring, 6 mile ring, 1 mile ring, and show the population density households in those areas. So that'll give us a good number. As far as surveys, they should be back here very soon. I know there's a lot of information that they're trying to quantify and put into legible terms, but that is coming probably here in the next 15 days. We should have all of that data back.
So we're going to have a geomap of all the residents in those rings?
Correct, and we're also going to have some pretty accurate mapping that shows what's in the ground as far as fiber and copper, if DOCSIS 3.1 is being used. Our guy Chip from Connected Nation has, crawled under fences and through ponds and all kinds of stuff to get out there and look at pedestals and neighborhoods. And, it annoyed a lot of people because we got a lot of calls, but we knew that Chip was out there doing what he was supposed to be doing. But yes, we should have all that information back. We have about 2.5 months left on our feasibility study when all that stuff will be turned back in. But from then, they're saying within the month they'll have everything. And then, we might give them a little more direction in the last month and some more things to sort of flesh out. But so Jed gives us a good starting point. 3 mile, let's look at what the population is within those 3 miles. We can do it for each area, all 3 of those areas that you identified, and go from there. Josh, you got anything to add, buddy?
Yeah, I would just say if maybe as another form of analytical data to see what exactly is available in these respective rings as another criteria. As an example, if you have an area 2 where you have, say, 2 different broadband providers available, but in area 5 you have one or none, should that one be prioritized over the other in that regard?
I would say, and it's a good point, in our areas like Red Bay where their network is oversubscribed like 150%, I would want to try to get that information too. Say, okay, there is some broadband available there, but not to the capacity it needs to be.
And I think the other thing too is the classification of broadband. That's recently changed, and so while some of the providers will say we offer broadband connections, they really don't.
What is it, 25 and 3 this week, Jason? Yeah.
So, if you're lucky in some of these rural areas, you may get 1.5 meg, and that would be in an ideal situation at 1.5 meg. More realistically,
let's do
less
this.
than that.
Let's see who has speeds at their house. Jason, what do you have at your house? 768K. Henry?
60 down, probably about 15 up.
Okay. Henry's got a good connection. Rick, you live in the south end. You got a good connection, don't you?
I don't think there's anybody here from CenturyLink, are they? I call them once a month because it just drops out. And when you're working, but you could be working on a major project.
So consistency issues.
And never have I called them when they didn't come back and say, well, we see no issues in the line.
Well, of course, Rick. It's your equipment, your computer.
One was cut.
We all know this.
1998.
Right.
And thousands of people without. And during that time, the entire time, the help desk says, we have no issues in the area.
Sure.
So apparently they're linked to their, the program there.
Dave?
It's unreliable, and the most I can get is like 15 eggs.
Woo, 15. I'd die for 15 almost. Dave, what do you got up there?
Got 22, but I'm inside the dead center of the city.
You're right there with Charter Spectrum. I think it has fiber running up there. Yep. Josh, I know you got a pretty good connection all of a sudden from Charter Spectrum, correct?
Well, their customer support was pretty responsive with me, and I don't know if I was one of the lucky ones or not, but I was a quarter of a mile from where the cable. I was one of the ones that was like a quarter of a mile away from where the cable ended, and they were going to have to cross a bridge, but instead of crossing that bridge, they went 2 miles down the road the other way and came back and gained maybe 2 additional houses. But I didn't have really good response at the time with the local office, but the local office was in transition, and somebody had told me to get on Facebook. And whenever I got on Facebook, somebody immediately fired back.
Social media.
Yeah, and it took literally like 3 months, I think, and I had internet in the home. I went from 10 megs with CenturyLink to 60 megs with Spectrum. But I can tell you from the sheriff's standpoint, we've got areas such as Morrison Springs where we got the public park out there, and it's a 1.5 meg connection, and that thing's down more than it's up. It's down right now. I've got to call.
Can anyone in this room that lives in Walton County not get internet currently? Anyone in this room? I don't think that there is. Okay. We at least don't have that problem, but we have a lot of areas where they can't get get internet. They're just not here. Unfortunately, probably couldn't get the advertisement online and all that stuff for some reason. I don't know, but let's continue our discussion on Wi-Fi and what we think are our needs. Let's shift. I think we've got a good plan, at least to get some good data for a north end. Let's pick a section. Let's find out. Let's look at these 3 sections. Look what our density of population is. But what about for our south end area? And specifically, I'm talking about ring number 1 down there.
Well, I'll say this about the south end.
Okay.
Speaking about cellular connectivity, I've found over the last 3 years that I've been down in the south end working on a daily basis that during the summertime, their network, Verizon's network in particular, is oversaturated. Mm-hmm. And so it just can't handle all the extra capacity. And so while in the fall and winter you have a very decent and solid connection summertime it's just not reliable. So I could certainly see where, to Josh's point, having a backup form of connectivity would definitely be ideal.
I think there was
specifically
another
for public
provider
safety.
a couple weeks ago that had 2 towers go down.
Right.
So, yeah, man, it really hurts us, especially if the sheriff has cellular connectivity in his car and relying on that.
Sure.
We want to provide these guys with the most up-to-date information when they're going to a hostile situation.
Well, I think, too, adding wireless connectivity and providing that as an amenity at our public beach accesses would certainly, benefit the public and, make us a better destination than we are now. It's something we could add to that list, and some other things that come along with that we've talked about with, beach conditions, those type of avenues of benefits, I guess, that come along with having that connectivity. So.
I think with our ring number 1 there, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, it covers every public beach access except for 2, Inlet Beach and
Miramar, yeah.
And Miramar, this is that piece where eventually I would like for the county to look for the analytics side of it, and we've talked with several firms that can do analytics because, again, we pay a lot of money for traffic studies and for all this stuff where we could get real-time traffic studies every single day for as long as we run this system. And that alone, I think, is valuable enough to look at the analytic part of it. And on top of that, once you get into it, you can start pushing notifications to people saying, hey, did you know that if you went 5 miles down the road for 7 minutes, you'll get to a public access that has 20 open spots? We can really incorporate a lot of different technology once we get moving using the Internet of Things. But we need something to get started. Yes, sir.
It's Earl from Fire Dog. I wanted to bring to your, depending on what equipment that you all use down on the south end or anywhere else, it can actually boost your LTE coverage too. So Verizon can use it. They can offload onto the network, so it actually boosts your cellular coverage too, along with the Wi-Fi. So you got to, when you're looking at it, you need to look at the gear that you're going to be using out there too, because you want to make sure you get your best bang for your buck. And that's what I wanted to bring up with that.
Excellent. It's a good point because we'd love to make money off this venture for the county that could be used for beach accesses, for technology, for our libraries, our students, tutoring sessions, community study hall, locations like that. All very important stuff, but, Verizon's going to have to pay to use county's equipment because they definitely want to charge us to use their equipment. But we're always looking to bring more money to the county, especially when we can earmark it for specific things that the community feels are important. Henry, yes, sir.
Rick, about the 2 areas, and I agree that we need to have both areas piloted, because down on the number 1 area in that ring is not going to be the same as how we're going to pilot in number 2, and exactly the whole infrastructure is going to be different.
Correct.
So we need to make sure that we understand both sides of it, because the infrastructure in number 2 we're going to have to design, which will be completely different than number 1, and everyone needs to understand that, because we aren't going to have the saturation in number 2 we'll be having 1, and the backbone will be different, and how we put Wi-Fi out will be different, and the analytics piece will also be different.
Let's let I'm going to ask Earl to speak about the differences in the infrastructure that we have at our 2 locations. I know a lot of us know, but for anyone that may be watching online, Earl, if you'll give us a brief description.
Sure. Okay, so you have 2 different types of deployments that we're talking about. So up in 2, you're talking about a rural deployment, which would be air fiber, for lack of a better word. And that is going to go to the homes. In section 1, which is where we're talking about the analytics, that is actually a Wi-Fi product that would be used by anyone who comes into the county. So it is 2 different. However, the most important part of all of this is whatever you do, they all, sooner or later, all have to link back together. So, and that's where it gets really difficult, and complicated. So you can't have your tower, you can't have 6, I think there's 7. You don't want 7 different independent sections. You want 1 giant section, but all independently working and connecting back to the main facility. So, and that's kind of where companies like mine come in, is that's what we do best, is connect all of those together and make them all work as one unit instead of all separate.
Thank you, Earl. Who'd like to speak next? Dave, I saw you look like you wanted to say something.
I just want to ask Earl a question. Earl, from my former IT days, we had different Wi-Fi networks in our different locations, but yet they were all connected by a single network. In order for that analytics stuff to be passed off from the top to the bottom, as you said, it needs to be one network. But how do the handoffs work for that if you run into a gap? Because there are a couple of gaps where the circles don't overlap. Will it pick back up? Does it issue an IP address to the individual person? How does that work exactly?
The end user's experience.
Yeah, end user. Because if you have to sign in over and over and over again, people will just stop using it.
There's a couple of different ways that can happen. So it all comes down to how the networks are set up originally. So if we use, in theory, and I would have to, and please, I'm not the expert in it, so I'd have to defer that question if we want to go down that road a little further with some people that are way smarter than me. But what I've seen is if we set up the network to run as one network, then yes, there will be handoffs, and it should pick right back up as soon as you get into your area, back into coverage, and pick you right back up. So, but again, I'd have to look a little more into smarter people than me.
And one thing I'd like to be clear on is that analytics are important to this. I don't know if it's part of our pilot project, because we're talking about a small area. Let's just say we start at 1 to 3 miles on the south end. Once we get that 6 mile or that entire beach, that's when we need the analytics. But I don't know that it's worth a vendor's time or money to put this plan together for a 3 mile until we're ready to do something larger. I mean, that's my opinion. My take on it is that let's focus on getting this proof of concept, getting some Wi-Fi out there, utilizing library access to get online so we know that it's Walton County residents. Our library number is going to go through the roof. Hopefully it's going to help us with E-rate. Which brings us to, maybe we should get to our next topic. We were talking about this earlier today, Henry and I, which is the E-rate of the backhaul for what we're trying to do. So, Henry, why don't you talk about currently what the status is?
Well, I spoke with USAC, and a couple things that they described to me as far as how we can use E-rate functionality as far as in schools and libraries. One of the things that they do permit is to have a Wi-Fi network from E-rate fiber or infrastructure that will expand to the property that it's serving. You can have schools come on the property, students come on the property, or anybody else that is related to a school activity can use that. Where it starts getting a little sketchy is when you go beyond the property. Some of the things that they mention here, but they do say after school hours, schools may open their facilities to the general public to use E-rate supported services. But then a couple lines down later, they say it's only for student activity. So, as you're all surprised, the government is very gray and vague in some of these areas. So we really need more confirmation in this because, we've been going back and forth, and USAC has sent us some definition of what you can and cannot do, but we really need more clarification because I think what we're trying to do here is something that USAC hasn't caught up to yet, is that, yes, we're serving E-rate to our schools, but what about our students outside the schools in rural areas that don't have any type of internet connectivity? And even though they say that's what they want this money for, they're not letting us use it to go that distance. So as Rick and I were discussing, this is something we need to talk with senators and people that can affect these rulings because these people out in these areas and students, manufacture what we're talking about, need to have the ability to connect to internet or Wi-Fi so that they can go and do the educational homework and different things and things that are associated with that, which currently E-rate does support. So, there's going to be more information that I'm going to get. I know Rick is going to be speaking with some people also that are talking with this in more depth, so we can get some more clarification. Because it's just kind of if you call USAC today, somebody's going to say no. You call back 5 minutes later, somebody will say yes. So we really need to get the definite answer of what's
And it reminded me of
work and
OSHA
what's
from
not.
my construction days. And the only thing clear about these rules is that they're unclear, you know. So
Exactly.
what I would say and what I've told Henry and what I believe is that when we did our fiber project, which is the $30 million of fiber for $1.5 million, the FCC talked to Henry, they talked to us and said, man, this is what we wanted to see. This is what we envisioned with the E-rate funding. No one else has done it like you guys have done it. Tell us how you've done it, you know, that whole process. Well, we feel like we're going to go to them and say, look, here's our next project that we're going to do that no one's ever done before. We're going to get connectivity to rural areas, grant us the opportunity to use USDA or the funding for this program, E-rateable. And if it doesn't work, this is a beta pilot program. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But at least give us the opportunity. And I really sincerely feel like we'll be successful in that because we have to have that. We can't afford in rural areas to pay. Barry, what is the contracted price right now for a 10 gig internet connection?
10 gig?
Yes.
I don't even know.
High, right? It's high. But if we can E-rate that, it's not high at all. It's very cheap. So it's vital to this program because we have to get to the kids. And if we need to go to Washington, D.C. to talk to senators, to talk to the Commerce Department, Division of Commerce, and then that's what we'll do. Lewis, you got anything to add, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, I have a question, and we're talking about E-rate. It may be two different programs as far as what you can and can't beta. I mean, we're looking at it now from a standpoint of you use your library card if you're a resident, and you can come in, and that's your number to log in. I mean, to get E-rate, and we'll see what the rules look like, it may not be that you can use your library card. You may use your school number. Same thing your parents log into to see the kids' grades or whatnot.
My only concern,
and that may
Lewis,
be one program versus another program, depending on how they do decide they may or may not refund and who can or can't use it from the community.
My only concern is I know a guy here sitting across right here named Josh who took his master's online. He's not a member of Walton County School District, but he still needs that connectivity. And that's where I would say, look, here we are, the schools and the county library working together again to provide a service to all of our citizens, young, old, whatever, that want to further their education, improve their situation, connect to the world. But it's valid points, you know.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, E-rate, and I don't know as much about it, obviously, Henry, but it's not, I guess colleges get it as well, or they don't? Is this, it's a K-12 in public, so even you're talking about masters, and that's not what E-rate covers. Right. So they're, you know, we, I guess, kind of have to look that if they say we only want to do students, I mean, if you have a kid that's in K through 12 living at home, we can probably do this through your school number, but addressing those who want to do college or something like that may be a different solution. I mean, I think coverage is what we have to see from viability, and then reimbursements and how you pay for it, maybe 2 or 3 different pots that have to do it.
Sure. And that's why, you know, really in my opinion, I see this as a library effort working with the schools and not a school effort working with the libraries, because there are limitations to students of Walton County, and that language is in there. A library is a little bit even more sketchy with what you can do for your patrons, because, again, we all know the definition of a library in Florida. So I'll put 30 libraries out there if we need to in one-room buildings, and, you know, they're the ones that decide what the rules and definitions are. It's how we interpret them may be different. But the point is, I think that we're all around this table are dedicated to solving this problem in this county. I think we've got some direction on one area. On this south area, did we start at a, Jed, you're a good voice of reason here. Should we start at a 1 and a 3 mile? Let's look what those are population-wise. And what's the consensus of the group here?
As far as the south end, I think your use case is just going to be saturation. I mean, in the north end, it's going to be, you know, not as populated, so obviously your backhauls won't need to be as big. As far as the south end, you would need a bigger pipe. You would want to test at least a beach access so you get a lot of people on at the same time using that data to see what those thresholds are. As far as the analytics piece, I don't know if you want to try and throw that in now or not. I know maybe the equipment or at least the software licensing is going to be different on that. So whether you add that in or take that out, you know, that's not a conversation for me to have. But as far as, I would definitely hit the public beach access so you get a heavy use case at the same time, so you can kind of see what Verizon's dealing with. Verizon, you'll have a fine signal strength down there. You'll have 4 bars.
So,
The
Jed, on
problem
that
is the
map-
backhaul, you don't have the bandwidth to support everybody.
Looking at that map, Jed, would you guess, which we can get with GIS and get exact, but it looks about halfway. I mean, half of this circle goes out in the water, so we're talking about maybe 3 miles hitting those several beach accesses there. We'll have to get with Josh and find out exactly how many beach accesses would be in that area.
And again, your coverage is a lot easier down there. There's no
Oh, yeah.
trees, nothing to go through. So, I mean, you can aim your antennas and fire down, and it's flat and low. You know, the north end is high in trees, and you're total opposite.
We are the highest elevation in the state of Florida, Jed, so.
You know.
Yes, sir, Henry.
As far as the analytics, I don't think that's going to be a great idea to start out with analytics
I agree.
because we need to get the system up and running
Proof
and
of concept.
functioning, and then we worry about almost like a second phase to that
I agree.
because the analytics is going to be a huge initiative in itself.
Well, I don't want to confuse any sort of E-rate or Triumph with money that they would say TDC should be spending. So I think that, you know, we've already had some preliminary conversations with Jay Tusa at the TDC, and he's very interested in it as well. You know, we have to be careful when we talk about analytics, and we have a brief conversation about that. It really scares a lot of people with what's gone on lately. But, you know, we would try to be adamant there would be no personal information, just following dots. Jed, go ahead.
I was just going to ask Earl, is the hardware equipment different to add on the analytics, or is that strictly software?
No, it's completely different. That's what I was going to bring up is you have to build this from the ground up, but with the future in mind. Right. So when you're building that head in, for a lack of a better word, you need to put all that equipment in up front. It's going to be a lot cheaper than trying to do it down the road.
Well, that's the only thing I would say you may want to start. You
So
don't have to turn the analytics
I think
up,
it's a
but
good
you may
point
want to
is
start it.
make it analytic ready, but that's not part of what we're doing to begin with. So then when we do say we're ready, whoever has that contract says let's flip the switch and rock and roll with it. We just got a text from someone who watched in the meeting that a 10 gig connection through Spectrum Charter is $9,355 a month right now. So, you know, when you apply our 80% discount, that makes it much more palatable for our board to say, you know what? Yes, we can spend this money to provide this connectivity, but if it's $10,000 a month, that's a hard sell for anything, you know. It's a lot of money. Any way you cut it.
Well, I'll tell you what else is a lot of money. $50 a month for a meg and a half.
You dang
So,
right.
I'll just throw that out there.
$75 where I'm at. $139.
Yep.
You guys know that 5 gig in Chattanooga costs $99 a month. 5 gigs in Chattanooga.
You can get fiber in Hammock Bay for the price that you're paying for 10 gig or 10 minutes of DSL.
Yep. And we want that all over the. It's a good segue, Josh. That's why I like you, buddy. You're going to segue us into Mr. Everett here, and Mr. Everett's got an email that he's going to talk about here. Rick, I'll let you use this microphone if you like.
I always think about he's talking about my daddy when he says Mr. Everett. I think now's the time. You guys are the people that are, and I've seen thousands of state, county collaborations. Walton County is the strongest in America. You know, I can say that. Not only I can say that, but a gentleman named Brian Tabbitt, who is the executive director of the E-rate program, lives in Washington State, is talking about what you guys are doing and how you're working together. Because of that, in Washington, D.C., there's 5 commissioners for the Federal Communications Commission, about 25 board members. And about 3 or 4 years ago, we went up there and sat down in a setting very similar to this. And the commissioners gave us a 30-minute window. And then after that, they gave us another 30 minutes. And then after that, they invited us to talk to the entire board. And after that, they gave us about 3.5 hours. And within 2 weeks of that, they had amended the rules. First time in the history of the Federal Communications Commission actually allowing district schools, users, to buy out and build infrastructure. What did we talk about? We talked about the fact that in the state of Florida, 67% of the state is made up of rural landmass. Landmass equals miles. So 67% of the miles in Florida for fiber has to be paid for with the 5% of the dollars that they're getting from the state. because they fund technology, not on the cost, but the number of people that live there. So when you go from Definiak to Paxton at $26,000 a mile, and you have to get that money back from the 10 or 12 people that might subscribe to internet, no one's going to do that, and they haven't done that. And we were able to share that. Now, what I'm excited about right now is that Walton County took it and developed the school portion of it and the trunk lines, and you guys have all been talking about that. But we all knew that the next phase was going to be the last mile. How do we get it from that infrastructure to the farmers, to the businesses along the way, to the residents along the way? As y'all might have noticed, there's a lot of political activity going on in Washington now, and there's a lot of activity going on in the race for Florida Senate. There's two gentlemen that want to be senators. There's one that's been there for a while, and there's another one that wants to be there for a while. About a month ago, and I retired 3 years ago, and the commissioner asked me to come back a couple of times and just work on some things. And she asked me this past November, the first thing that I thought about was getting to work with Rick in Walton County again on broadband. It's probably the only thing that I know enough about to be helpful on. But I also knew that the political atmosphere was right to do the second phase of this. I called Senator Nelson's aide actually around 12 o'clock today, and we had talked about 2 weeks ago and told her we needed some additional funding. During the time that they were debating the budget, this last time when we spent more money than we have, we were able to get the senator to put something like $1 billion in for broadband rural America. Walton County today, right now, is at the top of the list. We're hoping to be in a position to monitor that. But the point, and this is Mary Louise talking here, these funds are part of the omnibus bill just passed. Senator Nelson was a strong advocate of the rural broadband to be included in this package. So as much as Florida, particularly in the Panhandle, is in need of consistent and dependable broadband. So there's a funding item already funded, already passed, and available. And if we can follow the coattail of you guys and ladies and folks, we should be in a position to get a substantial amount of money. And one of the things that I like to see happen as a result of that, and it's been mentioned 2 or 3 times today in our conversation, is we might have to start here because we don't have the money to do that. And if we have to do this and build out based on the money, I would love for us to be in a position to look toward the future and say, okay, we need 150, 250, whatever amount of millions that we need, and go for it. I mean, we're not afraid to ask. We know the way up there. We know how to ask. And the data that is there that they're going to need that none of the other folks are going to have, y'all have lived for the last 10 years. So, sometimes things happen for reasons, but we got it in writing.
Let me add to that real fast. And thank you to Rick for reaching out to the senator because he's done that several times for us. But, if we can tell the Commerce Commission we need $200 million to run fiber to our home, and what that would mean is working with public-private partnerships with CenturyLinks, Charter Spectrums, and have them do a proposal with us to split some of that cost. But if that cost is $200 million, we tell that to the senator, and he tries to appropriate that for us. A couple years ago, Senator from Virginia got $800 million to run fiber to the home for Virginia. So we feel confident that we can get up there and state our case and start this process to getting there. So while it is a huge, like winning the lottery for Walton County, if we could get something like that, I think that there's clear paths to get there, which is very exciting. So, in the near future, hopefully we'll be, going and talking to these people in the Commerce Commission and telling them what we're trying to do, because if we can get fiber to the home in Walton County, there will be no place like this in the United States. And talk about fast growing. It'll go from number 6 to number 1, because why wouldn't you want to be able to work from home or work in this beautiful area where you can farm in the north end, you can go to some of those beautiful beaches in the south end. So I think we all know the points of this county and why you should live here, but we just don't have the connectivity yet. Yes, sir.
I just think about our meeting the other day in Paxton. You were talking about, and one of the young people was talking about expanding his dad's farm, and we were talking about the use of the internet. None of us wants a $500,000 tractor out in the field running on independable Wi-Fi or independent internet. And I sure don't want those driverless cars going through Paxton on the way to the beach and lose their signal. And yet, that is humorous, but that's the world outside of our rural communities. It really is beginning to happening now. And in Miami, which is always our motto is we want our fair share in a little bit of Dade counties, but Miami can take 1 mile, and their population is sufficient to get 100 times more dollars than we get in our 28 miles that we have to run. So, we finally got them to see that. But the message is that Paxton is just as important as Jacksonville, Miami, Orlando, Tampa, those areas. And I think what they've done here, and I told Rick right before the meeting, is you talk and talk and talk, and you wonder if they ever even hear you. And this indicates that he did.
And for, the language to actually say there that the senator put a stress on the importance of the Panhandle of Florida, specifically Walton County, is humongous when the Department of Commerce Commission is talking about Walton County and what we're trying to do down here. So we're going to try to capitalize on it and move forward, and it may be, it might never happen, but we're definitely going to give it the college try, if not more, and see what we can accomplish. Let's talk about that for a second. Anybody got comments on fiber to the home, what we're going to try to do with the federal government? Jed's got something.
Well, you're going to get into who owns the fiber, and then who's going to maintain the fiber.
Well, see, in our idea, we would work with the CenturyLinks and the whomever they would own that stuff.
Are we going to draw those districts, you know what I'm saying, or just Walton County get to make those choices? I mean, you open up a whole lot of questions, that need to be answered. Again, the funding's great. If we can get that type of funding, you need to go fiber straight to the home, but then we need to start working on logistics.
That's a great question and perfect time. Here's my answer to every one of those type questions. Them that make the rules can change the rules. And right now, the legislation is passed. Somebody somewhere is setting up the rules and regulations for the implementation of this project. And if we're aggressive and we know what we want and we communicate clearly, then we could help write the rules. So the answer to that is, whatever we want, we certainly should make known right now.
And Jed, to answer your question, from my standpoint, is that the districts should be drawn by the existing franchise rights because they already have infrastructure in place. Our money would be, we want a proposal to upgrade all of your equipment, to upgrade your lines, if your Charter Spectrum to expand your coverage area, or Fairpoint to expand your coverage area if your franchise rights allow it, which have been deregulated, so I don't know how they wouldn't.
We would definitely want some guidelines on pricing.
Sure.
Promises on maintenance.
It would be a huge process, Jeff.
But yeah, that's exciting.
Dave?
I saw the acronym USDA in that email when you showed it to me when we walked in the door. Is that where the money's coming from? Does it say? I only saw the acronym, but I thought immediately oh, they're doing this for agricultural purposes. Is that the case or no?
They'll have a federal agency administering the dollars, and it's not that unusual for the Department of Agriculture to handle Department of Commerce rural funding. In fact, they have a funding brace for that. I don't know, that wasn't declared, and I think this is what they're probably doing now, is sorting out how they want to do it and administer it. But as we are working on the other side of the fence doing a strategic plan for Walton County, now's the time to kind of put our heads together, and I always like to act instead of react. So if there's something that we really are strong supporters of and we understand because we've lived it and we know that it'll work this way, if we do it this way, then we ought to make sure that that's provided to the people that are making the rules and regulations, and particularly to the staff that's working with the senator so that they can monitor and make sure it happens that way and it doesn't slip through a crack.
Yeah, and that's what Rick's saying is this is all new spending. You know, this is all, a lot of it is because of our election cycle. So we want to capitalize on that here in Walton County. And Jed, it's going to be RFQs, RFPs. It's going to be a very vetted out process. What we need to do is say how much money we think it's going to be. I have no idea. I can take a per mile, quote that we've gotten to hit 7,000 homes, and we can multiply that and come up with a number. But that's obviously something we need to set another meeting for. And we want to talk about Wi-Fi today. I think that we've got some clear direction on Wi-Fi. I'd like to take the last 10 minutes to go around the room. If you have some comments, something you want to say, something you want to add, something we've missed, something we need to work on. Dave, you want to start us? Josh, go ahead.
Rick, I have a question on
Yes, sir. It's finicky.
On the cost. So per site, what is our estimated cost for the wireless?
If I had to get, we have some numbers, but we're just asking for budgetary numbers. We're looking at anywhere from about 100,000 to 300,000 for the north end. Probably somewhere, maybe a little bit more on the south end because we're looking at different equipment on the head end. That would be my budget guess. We would obviously go out for proposals and get all that at the right time when the board gives us direction to do that. But from our talkings and talking with different vendors, going to broadband summits, that's about the cost. I've heard anywhere from 100,000 for 6 miles with ubiquity equipment to 300,000 for 3 miles of ruckus equipment. So it's somewhere in that range, and I'm sure there's guys in here that could give us a much better idea, but we definitely don't want to hold them in a public setting that's being live streamed to a price, because if they name one, I'm going to hold them to it. Come on, let's get some comments. Let's wrap this thing up and make sure everyone's on the same page. Henry, you got any comments for us?
Well, just something that Mr. Everett said. The FCC is interested in Walton County. I can tell you that personally from the telephone calls I received about my E-rate and why we were doing what we were doing, which kind of scared me at first, because I've never been called from Washington before, especially from the federal government. So I was a little nervous, but after a while, he started saying that because of the meeting that Rick and a few others attended, they started looking at North Florida. And he goes, we want to see what you're doing. And then when he saw some of the news feeds, how the sheriff's department, the clerk of courts, and the county commissioners and the school district was working together, he goes, that's what it's all about, and that's what we're trying to get everyone to do. So he goes, we will be watching you, and we want to make sure that you do what you need to do, because this is what we had in mind when we initially did the one-time fiber install, for example. So we do have a voice in Walton County. As small as you think we are, we have been to Washington, especially Rick, and has actually talked to the people that make these rules, and they understand that, we want to do certain things, and don't think that we can't make a voice in Washington and make a difference. So, if there's something that we think we can do, and there's something that we want to design, we need to move forward with it, because we'll never know unless we ask. So we just need to keep pushing forward.
And from this, and thank you, Henry, for that, because it is, and we talk about it with the ability for us to work together as agencies, and we're talking about the sheriff and the schools, clerk of courts, even our TDC, which is really Board of County Commissioners. But, it's not done anywhere else. And we've seen it. We've gone to other counties and tried. Barry's seen it as well. We've gone to other counties and said, look, man, you guys can do exactly what we've done if you can work together. Like, I'm not going over there and talking to that guy. It's that type of stuff. So it's really unique. And we have a good group here, and we'd like to encourage everyone else to continue to come, members of the public, residents, providers, CenturyLink, Fairpoint. We invite them all. They don't come, but I understand, because we're really talking about, for the most part, they feel like we're talking about taking their business away, and that's not the case at all. We'd like to partner with them to enhance their services. They have the infrastructure. They have the billing infrastructure. There's a reason that companies don't want to do residential service, because 66% delinquency rate on residential service, the billing, the retention, all that costs a lot of money. So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We just want better services for our citizens, period. Dave, you got anything to add?
We're with you guys. From the north, you hear all kinds of complaints. The South always gets everything. When I told even just some of my friends that we were talking about doing some things up north, that would enhance our broadband connectivity, man, they just went wild. So the North is with you. We don't want it to be North versus South. We really don't. And connecting the county from top to bottom, it's a fantastic idea.
I think the biggest thing needs to come out of this is the actions that are taking place here and with the board is based on the previous actions of internet service providers in our area. So that the actions that we're taking are based on the actions or lack of actions that they've had over time. And we more than welcome them to come forward and tell us what they're planning on doing in the future to make Walton County a better place so that we can take different actions based off what they're promising. But that takes a trust on both sides, and we just haven't had it in the past.
I think it's important that we focus on long-term goals for the public-private partnerships and subsidizing infrastructure so that, even if we end up going for the fiber to the home, that we target long-term expansion for additional homes, because if we get that, one of the biggest holdbacks for the county is connectivity. The difference between education and business expansion is internet connectivity. And if a business wants to move into Walton County and they want to do it somewhere in the north end and they need 100 meg of internet, they can't do it. So if we add this expansion for the people to stay and the businesses to come in, and we only put it where they currently are, but nothing beyond that, if we look at a short-term goal, and we're still not going to get that growth.
I'd just like to say thanks to everyone here, the school districts, the sheriff's office. It's nice to be able to talk IT director to IT manager to IT directors all over and have support and, everyone working and pulling in the same direction. So we were able to get the things done that we've already gotten done. Obviously, there's a whole lot to do, and that will need to continue. It's nice to know that it's getting consideration in Washington and we're being watched, but with consideration, obviously becomes responsibility. Knowing that we're being watched, we need to make sure that we handle this the right way, and I know we will. It's just going to take some time and planning to get that done. I want to be very selective with our partners going forward. We've obviously had good relationships with some, not as good relationships with others, but that can be improved. I don't want to mark anybody off the list right now, but I would like to bring everybody to the table and start those discussions. But I still would like to stick with some of the wireless pilots right now and then start moving forward. Obviously, the future is fiber to the home. I think everybody knows that. The more fiber you can get in the ground, the better off you'll be in the future. We start talking about strands and how many strands we want to run here and how many strands we want to run there. Obviously, the guarantee to the commitment for future development. If there is another subdivision built, if there is more development here, getting those in place with our partners, having the contracts that they will run fiber to those residents as well, that it won't stop with this one-time funding.
Barry, from your standpoint from a provider, you're not a resident here, but you spend a lot of time. We'd like you to be a resident.
Well, like you were saying before, you guys have you guys are special in the fact that all of these entities, you've gotten each other to be able to utilize resources from every group, and you guys pool all these resources to make something like this happen. It really is exceptional and different from anywhere I've been working in some of these other counties that we work with. We're just, we're here as a partner with you guys, and we're here to provide whatever support we can and help in any fashion that you guys need us to do. So.
Well, I'll just say from a personal perspective, I'm very excited about the opportunity that we have here in Walton County. Certainly something that we should all be proud of. From a TDC perspective, I alluded to the benefits that come along with that, with the wireless connectivity, our beach accesses, some of the analytics, things like that. But I feel like if we can continue to work together and work hard, we will certainly accomplish this kind of in a phased setting. But we've accomplished a lot with our fiber efforts. And so if we look back at that as, kind of what the future may look like, I think it's pretty bright. So.
think it's prime time that we go ahead and try to do this with the feasibility study about to come back the same time we're in an election cycle. So I think Rick Everett can put some pressure where it needs to be put pressure. I think P3s are going to be foundational to what we do, whether that's with a WISP, a wireless provider, or the incumbents that are there right now. But I think we're on the right track. I agree with Jed with the proof of concept, that we get that down, then we can come with the analytics piece at the end. But I think we're working together good. We're unified. I think we all have the same goal in mind, and I think we just keep pushing towards it.
Yeah, I think, what's great is everybody that's around this table and the people who have come and gone and talked here. I think sometimes we lose sight of what we have done. I mean, when you sit back and really take stock at what's happened the past 2.5, 3 years, it's a lot. I mean, it's an undertaking that very few people would be successful at doing. The team that we have here, the people that come in, the fact that we have all the Constitution offices, we have providers sitting here, we have members for the public that are all together. I don't think I've ever seen that anywhere I've ever been. And I sit back and I remember just sitting at our computers, what we used to have to do just as employees, and knowing that some of that's still out there, and that's what the rural reality is, and working towards fixing that. It's a strong core group that's here that has said what they're going to do, and they've done it, and I don't see that changing. And that's what's exciting, is the group that's here is going to press forward and find a solution, regardless of what that may be. Something's going to happen.
I think everybody kind of said all the technical things that are needed to happen in Walton County, but I think we also have to remember the upper leadership that has made this possible. The school board is totally behind anything I do with this initiative. I know the county commissioners have said multiple times how they're backing us. The leadership within the clerk of courts and the sheriff's office have been backing us. With that support, we are able to do these things. Without that, there's many things that we would not be able to do today. So I think we need to remember that and remember those leaders, that they have the vision enough to work with us. Yeah, so I mean, as much as we do as a group here, that leadership behind us is everything, and I think we just need to remember that.
Thank you. A couple of things. I'd like to thank Commissioner Sarah Commander for the role she took in the early days, and I know, listening to everybody talk, we go back a lot longer than most of us can imagine. Commissioner Jones has allowed me to work with y'all, which is and do anything she could to promote our plan. But I want to just share two things that should encourage us. Kate Smith Elementary School in Washington County had 3 to 5 megs on speed test. If their teachers wanted to get on and see how their students did on the statewide tests, they had to schedule some time to do that. I got one of the wireless providers to put in 50 meg shooting right at that school for a couple of weeks. And on about the 3rd or 4th day, we asked the principal to get on the intercom and asked every teacher to turn on every wireless device and every computer in the school and to request something. And our office was about 300, 400 feet away from the school. And you could hear the teachers grasping, oh, what's going on? Wow, I'm on. You're on too? No way. And when you sat there at Chipley High School during that same year, and Chipley and I think Paxton was playing probably in the finals, and they're trying to watch the basketball game over the Florida High School Athletic Association. It was a feed, simple one feed. They had one place in the whole school they could go. We were able to get it up on the auditorium. So all the teachers and all the coaches and all the parents, instead of watching it in their communities, had to come physically and sit in one auditorium. When we were in Washington, I sat by the technology director for the state of Mississippi. He was complimenting the FCC on the fact that he was only paying $500 a month for 100 megs of internet. And I had documented through our studies and on what we were doing, the state of Florida, AT&T on the state contract, were charging our schools $5,000 for 100 megs for a district. This is for the whole district. And you could hear the commissioners and all, because first of all, that's totally illegal. Couldn't do that. But because of people doing things all over the state independently, they were doing it. What happened from that date forward was they began to look at state by state and how it was being compared and the cost of, the true cost of internet. And so we've come now to 100 megs for district is almost unheard of, even thinking about it. But that's how far in this, 10-year period of time, the last 5 years or so significantly. So things can change pretty quickly. Closing with this, I made the presentation in all of our small schools, like I've made in Walton County. 3 or 4 of the counties called because it was happening about the time I was retiring. Their question to me was, well, we just want to know what's in it for you, Rick. And I'd never thought about that for a minute. I'm retired. I don't need any more certificates on my wall. I don't do anything with the ones I have. And certainly none of these vendors have offered me any retainer fees or royalties or anything. And I thought, what is it in it for me? And what's in it for me is my grandsons going to school here, their children, your children, our future. And I chose Walton County to retire in because of what I saw going on here. And it is unique. So with that said, can't wait to what happens a couple of years from now.
We appreciate all your efforts, Rick, over the years, definitely. And it's a very good point. I think that it's very clear that all of our goals here is the same, especially, these different agencies. It's the children and the people in this county. Give them the education they need, the opportunities to get that education, stop that transfer of wealth from leaving this county. Earl, anything in closing? All right, well, I just want to follow up on what Henry said, and we say this every meeting, but we could not have done this without our board, school board, Board of County Commissioners, all 5 of our county commissioners, all of your school board members. Again, we got $1.5 million out of budget cycle. It was very difficult, but we got it done, and we got a unanimous vote on it, and we couldn't, again, without those votes, we couldn't have done anything that we've done. So with that, we're a few minutes over, but I think we've really covered some valuable stuff here. I'm going to set a meeting, let's just say 3 weeks from now, with our data on our areas, our population. If that'll work for everybody, we'll meet in the same room. We'll advertise it. Get Lewis to advertise. But from there, we'll say, yes, this is what we want to do, and then let's make that recommendation to the board right when our feasibility study ends. We've been keeping up the feasibility studies. So we have a good idea of what it looks like. But anybody else have anything to say before we close it out? All right, thank you all for attending. Have a great day.